it's Kevin from Cuca. Now, one of the ingredients that we're going to talk about today is an ingredient that nobody really has a clue about, the oyster. So the goal today is to tell you how to select them, because you don't know if it's good or bad until you get the shell open. And so we're going to teach you how to understand if it's a good oyster or a bad oyster. We're going to teach you how to open the oyster. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to get it into your face. No, we're not. That's the easy part. So let's talk about oysters. So here we have a selection of oysters. Basically, these are going to be kind of your pink ladies. This is another one, all from the area of Vancouver Island in the west coast of Canada. Now, when selecting an oyster, what you need to look for is the shape of the shell, and it means nothing. You're looking at if you're going to eat it raw or you're going to cook it. If you're going to eat it raw, you want a smaller oyster. A bigger oyster eating raw is too much of a mouthful. So you're looking at something small, probably something more like that. You don't want a mammoth-sized oyster, number one. Number two, once you know what you're going to be doing with the oyster, you want to select oysters that are heavier than they appear. Kind of like the way you choose a melon in a supermarket. So you're going to lift them up and you're going to check the weight. Now, if they feel really heavy, that means full of meat, full of moisture, which is very important. So if you have an oyster that's really light with not a weight to it, what's happened is it's open and closed, it's kept too long, and it's lost its moisture, and the meat inside is going to be like a dry, shriveled problem. You don't want that, and that's how you're going to get sick. So choose your oysters. You want them heavy. Like this thing looks like this. It weighs a ton. So that's when I know it's going to be great. So number one, choosing your oyster. Number two, how the hell to open this? And this is how it's done. Now, everybody has a different way, but what we're going to do, very simple. You're going to take a towel, you're going to fold that towel one loop over, and you're going to place your oyster right on top of the towel. The other side of the towel you're going to use to protect your hands so you don't end up with that, right? Now, this is an oyster knife. I suggest you don't use anything but an oyster knife. If you start trying to use other tools, you're going to end up in the hospital without oysters. So the idea is take oyster, right? Then what we're going to do, Beneke, what we're going to do is we're going to go right into the base. Now, in France and in other countries, they go from the this or from the side, but the oysters in British Columbia are best open from the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right in here, and this little lip here is where the oyster essentially has a weakness. So we're going to go right in. Now that we're in, very delicately, we're going to run the knife along the side, and there's a little tiny glue spot here where the oyster sticks to the top shell and the bottom shell. What we're going to do here with one clean cut, done, is we're just going to remove that one point of where the oyster is sticking to the top. So that's done. And that is your oyster. Now what you also want to do is very delicately here, you can see here, the oyster all comes away from the shell, but here it sticks again. So just underneath here, one clean move, and that'll separate it from the shell. And now you have mobility. With that comes the best way to knead an oyster. Now, people add mignonette, people add lemon, people add absolutely everything. But I advise you, before you start adding stuff, start with the reason why they're famous, which is the natural flavor of an oyster. There's no better way. Natural. Now you know how to select them, open them, and I'm sure you already knew how to eat them.